Welcome to Phoenix Podcast, hosted by Amin Moinian, where we deep dive into economics and politics.
Sounds interesting.
Today, we're going to be tackling this idea of the illusion of wealth.
Okay.
You know, we see these headlines all the time, like booming markets, record low unemployment.
Right.
But what if it's not really the full story?
Yeah.
What if underneath all those numbers, people are actually having a hard time, like, their day-to-day reality doesn't match what these reports are saying?
That's a good point.
And the stuff we're looking at today actually says that governments and central banks might be part of the reason for this disconnect. So how could this happen?
Well, one way is they can manipulate, economic indicators like the consumer price index.
That's CPI.
Yeah, the CPI. So it's supposed to measure inflation, right, but it's based on a basket of goods and services.
Right.
Imagine if the government suddenly puts huge taxes on some of those goods or even bans them completely.
So then the price of those things wouldn't even be part of the CPI anymore?
Exactly.
And inflation look lower?
Exactly. So the official numbers might look stable, but in reality, people can't even afford those basic necessities.
Right. Or the quality's gone way down.
Right.
So the cost of living is actually way higher than what the CPI is saying.
Yeah, it's like a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem.
Yeah, and that brings us to the Soviet Union.
Oh, yeah.
They always talked about how good their economy was.
Huge growth figures, right?
But for most people living there, it was really tough.
Yeah, they had shortages, rationing, quality of goods was declining.
Totally different from what the government was saying.
Yeah.
So it's like a reminder that these statistics, you can manipulate them. And just because a country says its economy is doing great doesn't mean everyone's benefiting.
Right.
And what we're reading suggests that today's economies could be facing the same problems.
Especially with how much power central banks have now.
Right.
They've got all these tools they can use to change the economic data.
Right.
It might not reflect at all what's really happening.
So are we saying we shouldn't trust any economic data?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
But you have to understand that it can be manipulated.
Okay.
And you have to look beyond just those headlines.
Right.
The source really pushes us to think critically, to ask who's benefiting from these policies and what's the actual impact on people's lives.
That makes sense. And there's also this whole thing about central bank digital currencies.
CBDCs.
Or CBDCs.
Which would give central banks the ability to track every single transaction.
Every purchase.
Everything you buy.
Yeah.
And that leads to this idea of mandated consumption, which is a bit concerning.
What do you mean?
Well, the government could control not just how much money is out there, but how you spend it.
Wow.
Remember those lockdowns during the pandemic?
Yeah.
Governments decided which businesses could stay open.
What you could buy.
What was essential.
Right. But that was for public health.
Of course.
Yeah.
But it shows how quickly they can take control of our economic freedom.
Right.
And with CBDCs, those kinds of restrictions could become way more common.
And harder to avoid.
Exactly.
So we've got this potential illusion of wealth, manipulated data, central banks getting more and more powerful, and now this possibility of CBDCs on the horizon.
Right. It's a lot to think about.
Yeah, so what does this mean for, like, the average person?
The source paints kind of a dark picture. It says this trend could lead to a two-tiered economic system where the elite have access to kind of the digital printing press.
So they control all the money?
They control the flow of resources while everyone else struggles to keep up with inflation and their buying power shrinks.
Yeah, it's like the rich just keep getting richer.
Yeah.
And everyone else is left fighting over scraps.
Right.
But the source doesn't just focus on the bad stuff, does it?
No.
It talks about how people might respond to this, like all this control.
Yeah, it suggests that people will naturally look for other ways to do things,
Like different economic models?
Yeah, systems that give people more control.
Things like local currencies.
Yeah, community-based economies, decentralized technology.
Cryptocurrency.
Exactly.
So finding ways to operate outside the main system.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be almost impossible?
Well, it'd be tough.
Especially if governments are trying to control everything.
Yeah, but the key is awareness.
So the more people understand how these systems work,
the more they'll look for alternatives.
So knowledge is power.
Exactly.
But how can one person really make a difference when you're going up against these giant institutions?
Well, even small choices can have a big impact.
Like what?
Supporting local businesses, trading within your community, using alternative currencies.
Yeah.
These things might seem small, but they can add up to real change.
It's like a quiet revolution.
Exactly.
Pushing back against the system.
And even if these alternatives don't replace the current system,
yeah,
at least they give people options.
More control.
Right away to take back some control.
So we've got this potential illusion of wealth manipulated, data central banks getting more powerful, and CBDCs may be coming.
It's a lot.
It is.
The main takeaway from the source is this. Don't be fooled by what things look like on the surface.
Okay.
Look deeper. Question the narratives. And remember, those in power can manipulate things.
Right.
A healthy economy isn't just about the numbers.
It's about people.
It's about the well-being of the people.
So we need to be informed, be critical, and be proactive.
Exactly.
And as we finish up this deep dive, I'm left with this question, and I think our listeners might be too.
What's that?
How can we make sure things are transparent and that people still have economic freedom as technology gets more advanced and the potential for control increases? It feels like we're at a turning point,
Yeah.
and the choices we make now, we're going to shape the future.
Yeah, it's a big question, isn't it?
It is.
The source doesn't give us all the answers,
Of course not.
but it says we need to stay informed, stay involved,
Okay.
and speak up for transparency and accountability.
Okay.
It also says we should look for and support things that promote economic decentralization.
So you give people more control.
Yeah, individual empowerment.
So it's not about knowing what's going to happen.
Right.
It's about shaping it.
Exactly. We have the power to make choices.
Yeah. Our choices matter.
We can build a better economic future together.
A more fair and resilient one.
Exactly. And that starts with understanding the dangers of too much control,
Okay.
questioning the stories we're told, and finding other perspectives.
Yeah.
The future's not set in stone. It's up to us to decide what it looks like.
And on that note, we hope this deep dive has given you some things to think about.
It's been a great conversation.
It has. Remember, learning is a journey.
Definitely.
Keep exploring.
Yeah.
Keep asking questions and keep talking about these important issues.